well, life's not guaranteed, and neither is your health. And I can tell you that I've seen countless people that woke up in the morning thinking that they had a whole life to live, and something tragic happened, and that was their last day. So you just have to really just be really grateful that you're alive and that you're healthy and able to do it, because whether it's you go to the doctor and they're like, you have cancer, or you have this or that, or, you have ALS, or, so many things can happen that's going to change your life in an instant. Or, it could be just a tragic accident that, like, a car crash, a random shooting or whatever, like, and that's all she wrote. So,
I have a very special guest for you today. You already know who it is because you've read the title of this podcast episode. Andy Glaze is not just a man who's run over 100 miles every week for over 300 weeks in a row. He's not just a firefighter. He's not just a family man. He's someone who shows up authentically. He shows up as himself. He bravely faces the things that he's struggling with and shares it with the world so that you and millions of others can see what bravery really looks like. What facing hard things, really, truly hard things, really looks like. This is someone I have looked up to for a few years now, since following him on social media. I've been listening to his new book, Smile or You're Doing It Wrong, and he has an amazing, inspiring story to tell. We delve into it a little bit today. I really hope you enjoy this episode. Andy is a real one. He's someone who has inspired millions online and continues to do so with his amazing, exceptional social media content. And he is someone that I'm proud to call a friend, and someone who I hope you enjoy listening to on this week's episode. Join me and Andy for our conversation about hard things, about showing up when it's hard to show up, about the real and true trials and tribulations of life, and about ultrarunning. Without further ado, I bring you my conversation with the great Andy Glaze. You came onto my radar the first time. I literally remember the first video I watched of yours. I was just doom scrolling through Instagram, and it was a video where I think you were like running along the beach, and there was an old guy also running, and you were like saying something about no excuses. How old are you? And he said he was like 80 years old. It may have been during a race. I don't know. I love this guy.
Jackpot Ultra in Las Vegas.
Was it Jackpot? Yeah. And I was like, I love this guy. And then I went on your stuff, and I watched a few more of your videos. This guy's cool. And then the moment where I was like, this guy is my favorite Instagram follow is on one race. I think, you were doing one of your classic Glaze style races. And at the end, I think you sort of changed the catchphrase now. You don't say it all that much, but now you say your mum can run a 5K.
Right.
But for a long time, you were saying time to drop the motherfucking hammer. And I was I love this guy. This is it. He's just done 98 miles, and it's time to drop the motherfucking hammer.
There's definitely a lot of race videos. I think back when I was a little faster and had a little bit more. I used to win ultras or like podium, and so I used to get really competitive in those last 20 miles. But because now I'm racing just so much and just putting so many miles down, it's a little bit harder to drop the hammer at mile 90 or 80 or whatever, and it's my fault. It's not, I'm not like smart about my training or anything like that. It's just reality.
Yeah, but I do love that you tease people on that as well, because you say, "Here's how I'm preparing for Arizona 300. This is what my taper looks like. I'm going to run 100 miles this week, 200 miles the next week, 250 miles, and then I'm going to do the Arizona 300."
Yeah, or like this is my 5th ultra of the year, and we're in March, right? So, yeah. I'm stupid, but it's fun.
Us runners love to overcomplicate things. Whether it's your shoes or your watch or gels you're using, whatever it is, we're always looking for the next upgrade. And one of the easiest wins is your socks. I've been using Sums for a while now, and the difference is really noticeable. They just don't get in the way. There's like no slipping, no bunching up. You're not getting distracted mid-run, having to adjust things when you're out on the trails. They just disappear. And that's the point, right? That's what we want. Right now, Sums are offering a buy 2, get 1 free deal. So if you go to sumsclub.co.uk, go to the checkout, add 2 pairs of your favorite colored socks to the basket, and then add a 3rd for free with the code RUNNABLE. Go to sumsclub.co.uk, use the code RUNNABLE at checkout for your 3rd pair free. Yeah, I think we're all pretty stupid though, right? Doing this stuff.
I just try not to take it too serious. I'm a 48-year-old dad who, has a career and everything. I'm not out trying to compete with, Jim Walmsley or something. I'm just out having a good time. So I think if we all just focus on ourselves and what we're trying to achieve and like not, worry so much about what other people think, we'll all be a lot happier.
Yeah, man, I think that's what's so refreshing. One of the things that's so refreshing about you is your lightheartedness and how you kind of really bring people into sport. Obviously, you're doing crazy stuff that many people would look at and say, this is wild. I could never do that and that sort of thing. But I think you really bring people into the sport because you don't take yourself seriously whatsoever, and you don't take the sport very seriously. I was talking to actually Lou, my girlfriend, the other day about this like difficulty in the space of like comparison with others, and right across all from the elite level or sub-elite level all the way down, you have people, posting about what they're doing, and then you see this, like see impressive things, like see impressive half marathons or marathons or people doing 100-milers, and like this endless comparison. It can kind of ruin your experience of running, but you just kind of do it for your own reasons, and it's really clear.
Yeah, I mean, and I find a lot of joy in it. So, I mean, when I was younger, and I'm sure everyone has this, feeling like, when you learn how to run back in the day, it's always about comparison to other people. How fast did you do that 5K? How fast did you run the half marathon? Did you do a sub-3 marathon? Blah, 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 blah. It's all comparison, and it's all how fast you can accomplish something. And I definitely was like caught up in that when I was younger. I can remember in my like late 20s, early 30s being like, I felt like if I didn't run a 6-minute mile, I was going slow. Like that was like, I had to run at least a 6-minute mile. Or I literally like my warm up was like an 8-minute mile, and like, anything slower than an 8-minute mile, I might as well be walking, and it shifted a lot as I've gotten older and, and doing different things. So you just got to give yourself grace. And, I'm in a sport and social media in general with a lot of like young bucks that are like studs, and they're like fast and strong and muscular, and they're like, all alpha males. And, I'm kind of like the court jester that's like juggling in his shorts, and just kind of entertaining everybody else. But, I definitely see all the comparison and all the stuff, but I don't buy into it for me.
Well, it can get dangerous because people get into running not just to run a fast marathon. And actually most of the time people get into running for reasons that are pure and their own reasons. And then they get caught up in the whole kind of space in the industry and comparison. And then they end up going for goals that weren't even their own, right?
Yeah. And I think, when you're running fast, from my experience, that's when you get injured the most. So when you have people that have their identity around social media and they need to create content and then they need to perform at a high level, it's a recipe for disaster because you're putting your body through like a lot of strain, and that's when you get hurt, and then that affects everything. It's definitely happened to me. I'm not when I was like on social media, but when I was younger and would run fast, like you get hurt, but
Yeah.
I'm just cruising. I'm in like I always say like party pace or like just zone 2 all day. So it's less likely that I get like injured just because I'm not really straining my body all besides the mileage and just the time on my feet. Like
Yeah.
I'm not straining my body in the same way that most people do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let's talk about your social media. I mean, I don't know if you realize this, Andy, but you are a marketing genius, especially when it comes to social media. Do you realize that? Or do you think it's just like, I've accidentally done this, it's a fluke?
Yeah, I mean, it was all, accidental, but I'm a business major, and I understand. My dad ran a big business growing up, and I definitely understand the concepts. But I mean, I'm a student of whatever I do, and I try to do whatever I do the best. And there's definitely a lot. Everyone tries to do it, and they don't understand the amount of work it takes. It takes like an enormous amount of effort, not only like just brain power, coming up with ideas and stuff like that, but just always being on your feet. Like, does this work? Okay, this works, so I'm going to do it. And then it stops working, and then you have to like quickly pivot to something else. And you're just constantly doing that. And then, like I said before, I'm like an old dude. So it's like I'm an old dude in a young person space, which, is hard. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I've marketed myself pretty well. I think, it's like just being myself, and people have accepted it. So, but I was also like one of the early adopters of, reels and TikToks and stuff like that. And one of the first people to really document on the new format, ultra marathons. Yeah. Like you had people on YouTube like Sage and stuff like that were like making content, or like even Jamil from Air Vipa, he used to have a show on YouTube, and, that was like the first kind of beginning of like social media, or like, Billy Yang had a couple really cool movies, on ultras. But I think I'm like the first kind of guy that goes on reels and kind of gives you that guerrilla lo-fi, what it's like to be in the middle of an ultra, not like from a elite perspective, but from like the common dude that's going to be out there for like a really long time, because most people that run ultras aren't going to run it like 15 hours and then, they're going to be out there for like 30 hours. And there's like a substantial difference between running 100 miles in 30 hours than 15. So, I think I was just kind of, I don't know, not lucky, but just, when everyone was calling me cringe, I just leaned in and said, you know what, I'm just going to do this. And it just worked out. And now there's so much competition. It's really hard to build anything. Because so many people are like, hey, I do hard things too. Hey, I do amazing things. And there's so many people that do amazing things and hard things. And it's really cool to like see it, but it's just so much harder to grow. But once you're like gotten to a certain size, it just kind of continues to snowball. So, and I just keep building and keep, working on it and doing it. So.
Yeah, I mean, you've done incredible. I don't think people give you enough credit for a few things. There's one thing that, I commented on one of your videos. I actually refer to your style of documenting an ultra as like Glaze style, because a lot of people, including myself, have taken inspiration from documenting ultras and, having these milestones, 10 miles in, 20 miles in, 30 miles in, and there's an art to it, right? There's an art to doing the increments of 10 miles, 20 miles, 30 miles, but also then like inputting some stupid like foot care between 40 and 50 miles, or some comment or something. I don't think people give you enough credit for those videos.
Yeah. I mean, you're telling a story. And so, and I did that way before. Like I used to just do that in my stories for so
Yeah.
long before I
Yeah.
started making videos about it. So, yeah, I've always just enjoyed documenting what I'm doing. Mostly in the beginning, it was just like because I wanted to like look back and remember what I had done, you know. And now I still to this day will like if I'm going to do a race and I've already done it, I go back and watch all my old videos because it gets me in the mindset. But then it's also like, oh yeah, that happened, or you brought that gear and it was really helpful. So I mean, it's helpful for me too. But yeah, I mean, I hope it helps people. I hope you know. I love the race UTMB, which Ultra Trail Mont Blanc, and the whole reason I did it back in like 2016 or whenever I first did it, I can't remember, is because I saw a movie on it. And it inspired me to be like, how do I get into this race? Right. And so then back then the rules were different, it was before Ironman bought it and it was all, corporate, but I figured out how to get in. I got in, I went to it. I was one of the only Americans there. There was like 3 of us.
No way.
And it was like back when I think Columbia sponsored it. You remember I mean, everybody wore Solomon's, it was like very, very European. And that all happened because I watched a movie. So now it's like, I feel like people watch my like little, because on TikTok, my videos are like 10 minutes long and like they watch these little documentaries and they get inspired and then they go sign up for that race and then they want to experience it, And so I think that's a really cool aspect as well, because if you watch a movie about someone doing something, then that's super inspiring for you to like want to do it yourself. And then that makes our sport grow, makes more people want to do it. And, my goal is just to make ultras cool and have more people doing them, and especially the younger generation. So it's not just a bunch of old crusty guys like me, like doing them, but like, 18-year-olds, 22-year-olds, people getting out of college that are, looking for a challenge. So, yeah.
Yeah, I could say that you've even mentioned a couple of the guys, but Billy Yang, especially some of the stuff I used to watch on YouTube, very, very different vibe to the stuff you're doing, obviously. But still beautiful and resonated so much with me. And it was the stuff that got me like, oh, wow, there are people doing 100 miles? Are you joking? And I didn't realize that people were doing this. I'm just some mere mortal. I could never do that was what I was thinking. But eventually when I started, COVID came along and I was like, maybe I should just like run a bit more to escape the house I'm in. And then I was like, maybe I could sign up to an ultra. It was those videos that inspired me to do so. And I think anyone who makes content for the right reasons and is doing it for kind of real reasons, like trying to get people into the sport, you can tell that your videos and your whole social media is to get people into it. And not only the ultra videos themselves, but man, the reason I called you a marketing genius is because you have all these catchphrases that I know well as an avid follower of your stuff. Smile or you're doing it wrong, obviously. Your mum can run a 5K, drop the fucking hammer. Did I splash?
Fail forward.
Fell forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important if you're going. I always tell people if they're trying to do something on social media and they're trying to like get big, like a catchphrase is like, it's important because and you might feel like cringy at first, like repeating it, but like people will remember it, what does Truett Hayes have? He's like something about pain. It's only pain or something like that. It's just
pain. Yeah.
It's just pain. I mean, all these things are, they're great. Like I get pumped when I say that, like it's just pain. Yeah. So yeah, I guess again, when I, thought of Smile, You're Doing It Wrong, I wasn't thinking it was going to be like a hat and a shirt and a book and all these things, but everything just keeps getting bigger. So it happens.
But they're mantras that actually help people during these races. So like it's not just, that's fun content. It's like, that's inspiring me to get into it. And then when they do get into it, they're running along the 80 miles into a 100 miler and they remember, I should be enjoying this. Smile or you're doing it wrong. Yeah.
I'm not at work. I always tell people like, smile because you're not at work. You're out there, you're suffering, but that's what you wanted. So, yeah.
In your book, you mentioned a little bit actually about the difference between pain and suffering. This kind of this like change in perspective on the feeling of discomfort, and you can either see it as just pain, the sensation, or you can reframe it. Is that the sort of mentality that you've always managed to have, or was that something that came after a while after doing ultras?
Yeah, I think definitely not always. I mean, a lot of like my mental resilience or, mental strength has been a long, slow process of development. And ultras definitely helped like get me there quicker. Just because I do so many, and I put myself in really uncomfortable situations so often that I'm constantly having to grow and do better. And I think the biggest thing that ultras have taught me is just the idea that like you constantly need to reframe like negatives into positives. Like you need to figure out a way to turn that like negative experience into a positive experience, which can be, hard to do. But, like the pain and suffering thing is like, again, like, yeah, you're experiencing pain, but you wanted to experience something very challenging. And so you have to remind yourself that where you're at is like where you wanted to be. Like even if you're like feeling like, if you're feeling really good and everything's like going like, well, that's part of the process, but that's not necessarily why you signed up to do like a hard thing. You signed up to do a hard thing because it was going to get hard. And a lot of times the hard part is the painful part, the uncomfortable part, the part where you're not feeling good, and then you have to figure out how to like move forward through it. So, but like, it's hard to remind yourself that when you're in pain and you're sitting, at mile 80 and you still have 20 miles to go or whatever it may be. So yeah, it's just, that's the trick that I constantly do in life is when something bad happens, I think to myself, okay, well, what's the good in this, And I think you can do that with most things, obviously if like, I think the line in the sand is probably like if somebody dies, I don't know if there's like a whole lot of positive in that, but beyond that, like I think most things, like if you lose a job, obviously you're going to have to get a new job. Well, that could end up being a really good thing. If you get divorced, that's terrible and it's very emotional and it's hard, but you might have more time to work on yourself. You might meet somebody even better. There's always positives that come of it, but when you're in the shit, it's, sometimes hard to see it. So, but yeah, definitely. And it's like one of those like skills that if you get lazy with it, it will go away, like the brain will go back to being lazy and not wanting to do hard things. So it's one of those things you constantly have to work on, just like a muscle that atrophies if you don't work it out. Like, mental strength will go away if you're not constantly putting yourself into like, a hard thing.
You've actually answered a question I had in my head, because I sometimes get asked this because I'll give the answer like when people say, why do you run ultras? And I'm like, it's because I learned so much about myself and it's about personal growth and all this sort of stuff. And then they'll be like, but surely you're done now. Like,
right.
Like why'd you keep going back? You've proven you're mentally tough. What more is there to learn?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I cold plunge every day, because I hate it and I don't want to do it. But it like forces me to do something hard that I don't want to do. And even like there's a season where I don't race, kind of like the winter. And then my first 100 comes in January. And, every time I'm like, it's like I've forgotten how to run 100 miles, even though I've run, I don't even know how many. But like when January comes around and my first 100 and I'm like lacing up my shoes, I'm like, can I do this? Like what,
Wow.
It's like your brain just doesn't remember like what it's like to run 100 miles because it's such an experience, even though I've done it. Like even like, I'm doing Arizona Monster 300 and I'm like trying to like mentally get myself like ready for it. And I'm like, can I do this? I'm like, well, you did it last year. And it's like, well, I know, but like, man, I went through hell last year to get that done. So it's sometimes it's not like an easy process where you just like hold on to the mental strength even when it's not around.
Yeah, and the memory of the struggles is never as bad as the struggles themselves, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, part of me documenting is because I know I won't remember. I won't
Yeah.
remember, like, especially when I'm hallucinating. Like when I start hallucinating, because it's not like you're on drugs, right? I mean, if you've hallucinated during an ultra, it's not like you're on drugs. You realize that this is not real,
Yeah.
but your eyes are like just seeing all this crazy stuff. So like mentally, I'm still pretty sharp. Sometimes it can, it can get a little iffy if I've been up for like 40 something hours, but, and I'll say to myself, I have to like tell this story because I'm not going to remember that I, saw a robot dog or, saw a guy in a purple suit hiding behind a sign or whatever the experience was. And sometimes I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna document it. And I always think back later and I'm like, I should have done it because it's funny when you look back and you're like, oh yeah, I was seeing all these troll dolls dancing on the concrete, but so it's like it's a good little memory trigger for me as well, and it's hilarious. Like I love watching
hilarious.
videos of me just like out of my mind, like, hey, all the cactuses are singing to me right now, and we're just like, we're just going down the yellow brick road or whatever. And I'm like, I look back and I'm like, holy Andy, you should have taken a nap or done something because you're like out of your mind. And but it's enjoyable at the time. It's enjoyable to a point. Sometimes it can get a little distracting, but I've learned now with like more naps, like I hallucinate less. So I just, we'll see. With a crew this year, hopefully I'll get some more like sleep. They'll force me to like take naps and do things, and that will be a little bit better. But the thing about destination trail races, which are like Moab, Arizona Monster, Bigfoot, and Tahoe, is the aid stations are very far apart. They're not like, I mean, some of them are like a marathon apart. Wow. And it's not a flat marathon. I mean, you might climb a mountain there's a mountain in Arizona Monster where you go uphill for 14 miles, like a 14-mile mountain. At mile like 120 or something like that. So you're 120 miles in, and then it's like, okay, now I'm going to go uphill for 14 miles, which you say like, oh, okay, that is so long to go uphill. I mean, you feel like, it takes you just hours and hours and hours. I mean, imagine if it's steep, if you're going up steepness and you're doing 20-minute miles. I mean, how many hours is that just to go uphill? It's a lot. So, think about that. Like, it's a challenge.
It's survival, man. It's survival. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize is that we sometimes watch the top athletes and, they're running the whole thing and they look like they're on form and they've got their aid station ops dialed in. But actually, most runners, like it's a case of you're surviving in the wilderness. And there's something about your story that I think resonates with me, and that is that like when you were younger, let's talk about this for a second, because I think us Brits and probably most Americans won't know the craziness of what was happening in Utah in the 90s. You were sent out as a teenager to the wilderness to survive. Is that like a pretty fair summary? I never used to think much about my socks. They were always sort of an afterthought. But then when you're like 25k into a run and something's rubbing and your foot's sliding around, suddenly it's all you can think about. It's the most frustrating thing. That's when you realize the small things really aren't small. And the small things in ultra distance have a funny way of becoming very big problems. Well, sums are just solid. They fit properly, they stay put, and you just don't notice them. And that's what you want. You want your socks to disappear and you want your feet looked after. Well, sums are offering you, the listener, of That's Runnable your third pair free. So if you go to sumsclub.co.uk and you add 3 pairs to your basket, use the code RUNNABLE at checkout, you'll get your third pair free.
Yeah, I mean, so 90 something days of hiking around Utah. Like, I don't know how many miles we do a day, like probably like 10 to 15 miles a day, minimal food, and just, yeah, we had to like start fires by rubbing sticks together, and yeah, just survival for like 90 something days. So it really, and that I was like coming down off drugs and all these things. So it taught me that exercise and movement and nature is like an escape route from drugs and pain and depression and all the things that I was like going through. I didn't really know it at the time that that's what it was teaching me, but you learn lessons when you're young that you can look back and be like, oh, that's why I do what I do, and because it's like fundamentally changes you when you're young, and it changes. My brain was still developing. I was 16 years old. So, when your brain's still developing and you go through like something traumatic like that, it like fundamentally changes you. So I'm sure that plays a part in, who I am today for sure.
Throughout your life, it sounds like you've dealt with a fair amount of trauma personally, like from escapism, turning to drugs and going through these experiences, all the way now to PTSD from a lot of the work that you've done as a firefighter. A lot of this running, of course, is one of the ways that you help manage your PTSD, right? Can you talk a little bit about your recent struggles? I know that we had to reschedule because you've been going through a bout of
I know.
PTSD.
I felt bad. We were originally going to talk, and
no,
for the
you shouldn't
audience,
feel bad.
I've dealt with PTSD from my job as a firefighter paramedic for probably about 5 years, and it comes and goes. Like I get little waves of it here and there, but like the last couple months, I've just had like it kind of like just reached a breaking point, and of course, it happened right before I was about to be on the show, so I had to reschedule. But well, 2 things in the beginning of what you were saying, like my whole life, like regardless of like what the problem was, I always have that weak moment where I'd rather just escape than like address it. And so in my book and in my life, like I've had a lot of weak points where like, instead of feeling the pain or, addressing why I was sad or depressed or whatever, I would just turn to drugs and alcohol or whatever. And I finally broke free of that like in my late 20s, and I haven't had any drugs since then. I drank occasionally. I'm not like a huge drinker, and I don't drink at all anymore, but like that was never like my thing. But drugs were, and I haven't done them since I was in my 20s. So that's been good. But as PTSD is a bit different because, like say something bad happens in life, like a divorce or a family member dies or something like that. Like I would tend to like try to escape the pain of that. But like PTSD is more like cumulative trauma that isn't necessarily like, I'm not like sad about it, but it like stacks up in my brain and like I don't have the ability to, my brain, I guess, still thinks it's like active. It's not, doesn't like file it away as like a past memory. And so after, a very long period of time of just seeing a lot of death and destruction would be the easiest way to say it, like as a paramedic, I see people on their worst day, whether it's a car accident or death of a family member or, something terrible happening to them, heart attacks, strokes, shooting, stabbings, everything you can think of, just day on, you just see it over and over again, 10 times a day, whatever. And so, I'm later in my career and it got to the point where I wasn't sleeping. I felt just terrible. And so, I finally was like, okay, like I have to take this a little bit more seriously, because for the last 5 years, what I've done is basically run, and it's kind of reset the brain, and then I have less symptoms, and I do other things like cold plunging helps. I started beekeeping. I
No way.
journal. I read books, the things that like will reset the nervous system a little bit, but it just got to the point where none of those things were really working anymore, and so now I'm going like the therapy route, and there's like a bunch of different methodologies as far as taking those memories and then like reprogramming the brain to like lodge it as a past memory and not a present memory.
Right.
But it's a longer process. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm like doing right now, and it's going well, but it's very, very challenging because I'm forced to like discuss a lot of things that have happened that I've seen that I've never talked about before ever. They just remain in my brain, and so I'm trusting that the process is going to work, but it's challenging, because I'm only trusting that it's going to work because a lot of people have told me that it's worked for them. But, when you're in the thick of it, it's like, it's almost worse, like when you start talking about all this stuff. And it's just been challenging because when you can't sleep, sleep's how you recover, not only mentally, but physically. And so, that just poses like a whole other challenge in life, is like when you just feel exhausted all the time.
Yeah. It must be a really tough process to go through. And I guess like, well, we talk a lot about doing hard things. And sometimes I think that hard things, like physically hard things, are glorified a bit. And people who are really into ultras like us want to do these hard things. And so it's like a chosen hard thing. But really, actually, the toughest stuff is the stuff we don't want to do, right? It's the stuff you're going through. And so I think it's a real testament to your message, actually. And the fact that you're being open about it is really encouraging and really helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I still struggle, because I, of course, because everything on my social media is what I'm going through. So I talk about it pretty openly. And it's hard because I feel like I'm like this tough guy who does like hard things. And yet I'm like telling people that like mentally I'm unstable, basically. And it's a hard thing to admit, because you feel your ego's like, oh, you're so weak, and people are going to judge you, and people are going to like, make fun of you behind your back. And you have to like get over that like feeling.
Yeah.
Because with my platform, one of the things I, always want to achieve is helping other people do the hard things. And so, there's a lot of people out there that are suffering with addiction, with depression, anxiety, all these things, PTSD. And so if they can see me come out and go, hey, I'm struggling, this is what I'm doing, I hope that it helps them. And I know it has, because I've gotten, a ton of messages about it, which is good. I mean, it's hard because like I can't really help them, but like it's nice that they are seeking help because of the video. Like I literally had a guy say that he was a dad with kids and everything, had everything going, and he was like in his room going to kill himself. And he was doom scrolling and came across one of my videos talking about PTSD and getting help and blah, blah, blah. And then he like went down the rabbit hole, started watching all my videos, and then like decided not to kill himself and get help. And he's, still alive. So, that's one person that messaged me, and I'm sure there's a lot more, that I probably helped positively. And so I just have to remind myself that like, even though it's hard for me to talk about it and I feel all these emotions about weakness and, whatever, that at the end of the day, the mission is to make the world slightly better. And if I can do that, then I'm winning. So, but it's, it's a struggle because everyone, like, oh, I hope you're doing better. And it's like, no, I'm not. I mean, there's like, I've only been dealing with this for like, not even 2 months. Like, this is not like, it's just like, oh yeah, you're fixed now. I mean, this is going to be a pretty long process to wade through all these memories and go through, I have to build a relationship with a therapist and on, and, I mean, there's no quick fix, like everyone wants a quick fix, but
Yeah.
there's no quick fix when it comes to this sort of stuff.
Well, man, when you mentioned that you feel like you want to help these people, like you want to do something to help them, but
Yeah.
I mean, your role in this is that trigger point that a lot of people need. It's the encouragement, and the encouragement that a lot of people need is to see someone like them or someone that they can see themselves in some capacity, be open about this stuff and be vulnerable and be brave and do the hard thing and talk to hundreds of thousands of people about the stuff they're going through. And to be honest, man, I think like, not that I necessarily believe there's a reason for everything or there's any sort of higher dictator, telling us that there's reason for all these things, but there can be good reason that comes from everything that happens. And I think that everything you're going through, if you keep sharing, as I know you will continue to help a huge number of people. And I personally am grateful for having someone like you in the space who is open enough to talk about this stuff. And look, I've been listening to your book. I pre-ordered it to read it, but Audible felt the need to release it early, so I've been listening. And the openness in your book is it's a great example. It's a great example of what it means to be brave and to be open about this stuff. And I just want to compliment you on that, man, because I don't think people give you enough credit for that as well. Like, you run great distances, you're encouraging people to get out the door, but you're also encouraging people to do really hard things.
Well, and I think as humans, we all make just a ton of mistakes our whole lives. And then we watch TV and look at the internet and we see all these perfect people. And we think to ourselves, wow, I'm such a mess up because I did X, Y, and Z. And these people just never make mistakes and they never have problems. And so I tried to be super honest with the reader about that I messed up a million times in my life, like up and down and up and down and up and down, and made lots of bad decisions and then had to figure out how to get myself out of them and, bounce back. And I hope when people read it, they go, oh, I guess it's not such a bad thing that I've made all these mistakes, because we all do. And we're all, even the famous people that we watch on TV or movies that act like they're so perfect, man, they got a lot of problems too. They they don't talk about it because, they have image consultants and all these things that, that make you feel like they're like better than you. But, we're all just humans and we all just err and fail and have to figure out a way to like keep moving forward. So
yeah, that's something that I'm inspired by you about is, in order to run 100 miles every week and to have such a busy life, we talk a lot about consistency. But in order to be consistent, you need to have this adaptability about you. And I think there's something amazing about what you do, because in order to get to the 100 miles, like quite often you're like running in airports or you're getting up at 3 a.m. to do certain things. Like we have to be adaptable, right? And it's like this representation of life. Like life is messy and we have to adapt if we're going to show up.
Yeah, there's no straight line to the finish line. It's just like lots of curves and ups and downs. And I mean, you have to be dynamic. Like, you can't get static. It's like that dynamic life and being okay to change. Everybody doesn't like change. Change is scary. Change is hard. Change gets you out of your comfort zone. But you constantly have to be changing in order to move forward and get things done. So, I mean, and the world just constantly changes around you. So if you're not changing with it, then, you're going to struggle later in life. when the whole world's different and you're still the same.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to continue to do the thing you're uncomfortable doing, because otherwise, if you get used to it, it becomes less hard, and it's not about making the hard things easier.
Yeah. I think AI is about to teach us all that lesson, like pretty soon. I think the world's it's gonna change a lot. So if we're not real adaptive here soon, it's, we're all gonna be struggling. So
for sure. One change that you are making, or something new in your life this year, is that you're coming to the UK, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was coming twice, but the Dragon Back Ultra they just went bankrupt. So
yeah, Oreo events, yeah.
So unfortunately, it's just going to be once, which will be the Spine race.
The Spine,
that's my A race of the year. That's the one I'm most scared about, and it's going to be, I think, probably the hardest thing I've done in quite a long time. So I'm obviously looking forward to it, but I'm also just absolutely terrified. So
yeah, well, we've got I think 40% of the audience is from the UK, and many will know about the Pennine Way. For those who don't, the Pennine Way is 435 kilometers, 260 something miles. Goes from Edale in the Peak District all the way up to the border of Scotland, in a little village called Kirk Yetholm. It's a beast and it's beautiful. But how are you preparing for the Spine race?
Well, I mean, so I'm doing Arizona Monster, and then I'm gonna do Cocodona, and Cocodona's 250 miles. This will be the 6th time I've done it solo with no crew. Mm-hmm. So, because the Spine race is solo with no crew, hopefully that will get me in the mindset because I'm going to go from Cocodona to, the Spine. It's just the Spine has less aid stations. So I think, just anytime you do anything for the first time, it sounds like you go into a lot of villages and you have access to food and water, but because I don't know what that looks like, it's just a little nerve wracking. And then I'm vegan. So, I get a little nervous about even going into a little village, because it's not as easy for me to find food.
Yeah.
So, and a car with no fuel doesn't go. So I have to just make sure that I have enough food and water. But if I can solve the food and water problem, I know I can do the distance. So, and then on top of that, a lot of water, a lot of bogs, a lot of moisture, wet feet, all that stuff, which I'm a desert runner, so I don't have a lot of experience with that. But luckily last year at Moab, we had 98 hours of rain, and a lot of ankle deep, knee deep water that I had to go through with just a ton of mud. And so I got a real good taste of what it looks like to just be wet for 4 days straight, which was miserable. But, I got it done, and it didn't kill me. So I think, that helped prepare me as well. But again, I don't know what it looks like, if I go there and it happens to be perfect weather the whole time, then it'll just be my feet getting wet in the bogs, which is not a big deal. But if I go there and it rains on me for 5 days, then obviously that looks differently.
It is very weather dependent. It's very weather dependent. I mean,
all races are,
Yeah.
But as I always say, the weather outside is weather. And when you're doing a race, everybody's going through the same thing. So, it's not like you have to be oh, woe's me, this is happening to me. It's happening to all of us.
Yeah.
So, there's a little bit of, we're all suffering together, climbing one of those huge mountains during Moab last year. And I was on my hands and knees crawling because it was so muddy that we would just keep sliding back. And I was holding on to trees and bushes and pulling myself up a mountain. while it poured rain on me. We were all doing it together. There was like 10 guys and we were all doing it together, and we were all laughing and swearing and, all these things together. And I thought to myself, anybody that finished Moab in 2025, we all went through that, and we'll all have that bonding moment. Like if I meet somebody and they go, oh yeah, we ran Moab in 2025, I'll be like, we did some stuff that year that, it was a 150-year rainstorm that never happens. So
it's so unlucky. What?
Yeah, well, but like races like that, sometimes like I do a little bit better because I really kind of lock in on those like horrible conditions, and I'm able to like move through them a little bit better. I'm good at like suffering, I'm good at the miserable moments and thinking to myself, like, this is just going to make such a great story. This is going to be so fun someday to talk about,
Good at smiling in the moments that everyone else is crying.
Yeah. But it's like, man, if it's so comically like horrible, it's like all you can really do is just laugh at how, like, we got to the top of the mountain. We're like, heck yeah, we're at the top of the mountain. Well, guess what? Now we have to go straight down, and we have the same mud on the other side. I literally had to slide on my butt because, there's like no other option. So you're just sliding down this mountain on your butt, which was gnarly, while it's pouring rain on you and everything. And then you get down and you're like, sweet, now I'm on a road. Well, now the road is like 8 inches of mud. So even though like in normal times you would just run down this road, you can't run down it because it's just, it was just like so comically like, this is insane. But we all had to do it. We all got through it. And, at the end of the day, finished the race. So
sometimes it is so bad that it's funny, right?
Yeah.
What are we actually doing? This is ridiculous.
Right. This is insane. Right. And like, it's, when you're not competitive and you're not worried about winning, sometimes you can just like sit back and enjoy the madness, and it makes it more enjoyable because you're like, this is just so hard. It's stupid, but yeah,
there's been, I say that there's, you're good at smiling when people are crying, but you've had moments of pure gratitude multiple times, I think, over the last few years that you've documented. And I've sort of had similar moments myself where, you're going through a really tough time or you're coming towards the end and it's been so hard and you're just overwhelmed by gratitude. I think it was Cocodona. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was certainly one of these 200 mile plus races. And, days and days had gone past and you're at the end and you didn't want it to end. Most people would be like, I'm so glad I'm towards the finish, but you didn't want it to end. And you were, tearful and grateful. There's something special about that.
Yeah, I think people think like I record myself because I start to cry, and it's like I record myself talking, and as I'm talking, I get emotional and just continue to roll with it. But I think I used to get runner's high all the time, and I don't get it really often. I get it like at mile 80 or 200 or something like that, but it normally just feels like that, where it like every emotion possible all at once, joy, sadness, excitement. And it just like, I just feel flooded with these emotions, and it normally just comes out as tears, but it's like a happy, sad, just fun, terrible, like all at the same time, which is a great feeling. But, a lot of times it's just like, I just feel so like grateful that my body can do these things, because I know someday it's not going to be able to. And I know there are a lot of people that can't do them. And that could be on lots of levels. 1, because they're ill. 2, because they're injured. 3, because something happened to them. They were in an accident or something like that, and they can't do it. Or 4, maybe they just have kind of given up and, got fat or, got out of shape, and like, they just can't do it. And so I feel super grateful that my body is allowing me to do it. And I just want to take advantage of that for as long as I can. you're quite young, but as you get older, you start to like sort of see that moment, where it's going to start to get harder to accomplish these things. And life is very finite, which feels more finite when you get older. It's harder to see that when you're younger and you feel a little bit more invincible, but that mixed with, being a firefighter paramedic and just seeing so much, so many people get hurt, killed, and injured that you just realize so much could happen in life, like, Pete Kostelnick, he's one of the top ultra runners in the world and was going to Leadville and got in a horrific car accident and like fractured his hips and all this stuff and like couldn't run for like a while. And he was like top of his game, winning everything super fast. And like all of a sudden he's barely able to make it through races and he's at the back of the pack. And like, he's now years later, he's back at the front, like crushing it. And like,
Mental.
but just, it can happen like in a blink of an eye where you're the top of your game. You could have a 6-year running streak and get in a car accident and it's all over. Right. Or get hit by a car or trip going down some stairs. I mean, you just never know. Right. I mean, I don't like to put that energy out in the world, but at the same time, it's like, you have to be kind of realistic that life throws life at you and it's not always this like great thing. So while I'm able to do it, I'm going to be super grateful and I'm going to be like happy because I know someday it will end.
You say like, I don't want to put that energy out in the world, but I actually think it's a really good energy to put out in the world. I've read 2 books. You guys might laugh at this, but in the last 2 months, I've read 2 books on mortality. And it reframes your whole view of every day. Every day you're grateful. You go into each day, and even when you don't want to run, you're like, yeah, and exactly. Like every day, you're like, do you know what? This is a gift. There's something about that as well, because like we don't want to always go for a run, or we don't always want to go to the gym or do the things we need to do. It's like a chore. Sometimes it feels like a chore to do it. But, you're helpful in reframing that, man. Like reframing how we see the hard things and the things that we should do.
Well, life's not guaranteed and neither is your health. And I can tell you that I've seen countless people that woke up in the morning thinking that they had a whole life to live and something tragic happened and that was their last day. So you just have to really just be really grateful that you're alive and that you're healthy and able to do it, because whether it's you go to the doctor and they're like, you have cancer or you have this or that, or, you have ALS or, so many things can happen that's going to change your life in an instant. Or, it could be just a tragic accident that like, a car crash, a random shooting or whatever, like, and that's all she wrote. So, definitely, it motivates me to get me out the door, and to keep moving because I just feel so grateful to be alive.
And that's the perspective we need. We started this conversation talking about comparison in the space and like obsession over times and all that sort of stuff. But, the real shit is that we get to do this stuff, right? That we should be grateful in doing this stuff. We should smile as we do it.
Right, exactly.
Or we're doing it wrong.
That's right, exactly. Well said.
Well, Andy, it's been a pleasure, man. I'm a huge fan, and I will say this with my chest: your account on social media is my favorite account, and you also, you're entertaining, you're fun, you make great videos, but you're also a real light in the running space. And I think that like if you're listening now and you've been living under a running rock, then go and follow Andy Glaze. You've got a new book out as well.
I do.
We should take a few minutes just to talk about Smile or You're Doing It Wrong, aptly named. A bit of a memoir, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's just, starts when I'm young and I'm messed up and then kind of goes all the way to where I am now. And mindset and how I like phrase things in my head and how I get through tough times, and a lot of like my failures, not only in life but in races, and the lessons I've learned and how I've continued to move forward despite all the setbacks. I wrote it partly to help me, but also like I hope to help other people with it. It's not going to be like a Goggins book where I become super rich from it, but I think I'll be rich in the sense that helping people will fill my soul.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah.
If you're listening, go listen to the book already on Audible, but it's out at the end of March or April.
Yeah, the 31st it will release. So
pre-order it, and
right during the Arizona Monster 300. So
yeah, good luck, man. Drop me a message when you're in the Peak District. My brother lives in the Peak District actually, so maybe I'll head up and be part of the spine. Cool. Good luck with everything, man.
It's gonna be hard. Let's go.
What a guy. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Andy. He's not only someone who inspires so many every day with his social media content to get out the door, to work on yourself, to do hard things. He's someone in my eyes who shows up in the right way. He shows up authentically. He shows up vulnerably. And he shows us what it means to really face the truly hard things. And his perspective on all of this is one filled with gratitude. It's one grounded in what really matters. And I think that's something that is worth sharing. If you want to listen to his book, Smile or You're Doing It Wrong, it's available already on Audible. It will be available on other platforms very soon. You can pre-order it if you go to the link in the show notes if you'd prefer to read it. Show your support. He's a real one. Thank you, Andy, for coming on the show. It means a lot that you did. Thank you for listening. The more you listen, the more you rate the podcast and engage with it, the more we can get amazing, inspiring, awesome guests like Andy on. Thanks again for listening. Run the runnable. Keep showing up for yourself. And I'll see you next time.